Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to when you want to get past the headlines. We take stacks of information, direct conversations, legal docs, investigative reports, and we basically boil it down to what you really need to know. Today, we've got a really unique story. It's compelling, honestly. It pulls together government efficiency, or maybe inefficiency, tech giants, political power, and this kind of hidden world of digital activists. A lot of what we're digging into comes from direct talks with an anonymous source we're calling Surge. Their perspective gives us this really behind-the-scenes look.
Yeah, it's quite a mix. And our mission today really is to untangle these threads. We're looking at the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, they call it, and the influence of people like Elon Musk, former President Trump. And crucially, the role these anonymous groups like Surges are playing, often totally unseen, but, exposing what's actually happening inside federal operations.
Exactly. Get ready for some surprising stuff, maybe some aha moments that might just shift how you think about information and power in D.C., and why folks like Surge matter. So let's start with this one detail from Surge. It's kind of wild, actually. It immediately makes you think, okay, what's going on here? Surge claimed that a lot of DOGE employees, when they logged into government systems, they were all using the same name, Amy Gleason.
Right. And what Surge is describing there, it's a huge red flag from an operational security standpoint. It's not just weird, it sounds intentional. The source, Surge, explained that using one single generic name like Amy Gleason, it seems like a deliberate tactic. It obscures who's doing what. Think about it. If everyone logs in as Amy, how do you trace who deleted that file? Or who accessed that sensitive record? It makes tracking specific actions, especially controversial ones like, getting rid of something, almost impossible.
It basically erases individual accountability right from the start.
Precisely. It's built-in deniability.
Surge even mentioned this meme their group made, kind of dark humor. It was, who is Amy Gleason? And the punchline, we're all Amy Gleason.
Yeah, that meme is telling, isn't it? It shows that people watching this knew it wasn't just some random convenient thing. It points to this deliberate, maybe even systemic way of hiding who's responsible. It makes you ask, well, what actions needed hiding?
And that question leads us right into this major security issue concerning the Office of Personnel Management, OPM. This goes back to January 2025. Allison Gill, the investigative reporter, she first flagged potential privacy problems around OPM's main HR email servers, hr@opm.gov.
Right, and Gill's reporting involved an interview with a systems security expert known as Jay. Now, this is the same Jay who collaborates with Surge, our source. And Jay found some really disturbing things. He looked into what OPM subdomains were publicly listed on DNS servers. Think of DNS like the public phone book for the internet. What he found was, well, alarming. Numerous OPM subdomains were just out there. Control panels for infrastructure, things that look like personal workstations, admin-level stuff, things that should never be public.
Like leaving the keys to the front door just lying on the porch.
Exactly. And then it got even weirder. Jay noticed that after a little while, more than half of these admin portals just vanished from the public record.
Poof. Gone. Like someone panicked and tried to clean it up fast.
That's certainly how it looks. And the timing is incredibly suspicious, the things that got hidden. They included those exact hr@opm.gov email servers Gill was worried about. Also, these load-sharing appliances systems that handle lots of traffic, which might explain why there were 20 different HR email addresses, HR0 to HR19. But here's the really critical part. Jay found evidence of active administrators logging into these systems from offsite. And potentially, maybe even from a foreign country.
Whoa. Okay, so not just an internal mess-up. This could be external access.
Yeah.
Unauthorized.
That's the implication. It points to a level of remote access, maybe even penetration, that's way beyond just sloppy IT.
And the sources, including what Surge told us, this is just a motive for all this secrecy, this frantic shuffling around. It connects to deleting data, right?
Indeed. Jay, the security expert, he theorized that this whole process, moving OPM's data from their own servers to the cloud, maybe using some kind of external box physically attached to their servers, it looked like a rushed job. A rushed job specifically designed to make it easier to quickly delete the original servers. Why? To destroy evidence. Evidence that could later be targeted by FOIA requests or, subpoenas. It suggests an operation that wasn't just sloppy, but maybe deliberately engineered by a small outside team, maybe just 3 or 4 people to bypass transparency.
So connecting these dots, the OPM email servers weren't just vulnerable, they were likely compromised. That's a massive deal for an agency holding data on millions of federal employees.
That's the frightening possibility, yeah. While those subdomains were public, there was a window where those email servers were wide open. Jay's findings strongly suggest a major breach occurred. And adding to that, when they supposedly moved the data to the cloud, the security certificates on the original servers failed. That caused emails to bounce back. That kind of failure, it points to a process that was incredibly rushed and didn't follow basic security steps during a critical data move. If it was compromised, sensitive emails could have been accessed, copied, maybe even changed. It's a serious potential breach.
And this isn't just some isolated IT fumble happening in a dark room somewhere. The sources, like Wired's reporting, they connect these OPM problems directly to Elon Musk and his tech associates.
Exactly. Wired reported that OPM's top leadership is now essentially controlled by people with direct ties to Musk and his corner of the tech world. You've got Amanda Stales, formerly from Musk's AI company, XAI. Her email was linked to that really controversial OPM memo asking employees to basically snitch on coworkers involved in DEI initiatives. The timing, again, is interesting. You have this uproar over the snitch memo, and then suddenly it looks like they might be trying to set up a less traceable, more easily disposable email system.
And Scales isn't the only one, right? There are other names from Musk's orbit in there, too.
Yeah, Ricardo Biasini and Steve Davis both came from Musk's Boring Company, the tunnel digging venture. They are also involved at OPM. There are rumors, pretty strong ones, that Steve Davis is advising Musk specifically on DOGE budget cuts, just like he did with the big layoffs at Twitter after Musk took over. I remember Musk's email to Twitter staff, the "a fork in the road" one. That exact phrase pops up in the controversial OPM email. It's not just language, it seems like a shared playbook. Plus, you have these very young individuals, like 21, even 19 years old, listed as software engineers advising OPM. It raises serious questions about, their qualifications, their actual roles, and the whole process for this rapid data transfer.
Right. What exactly is a 19-year-old doing advising on a massive federal data migration? Okay, let's dig into that fork in the road email itself. It seems pivotal. Allison Gill reported on it. Serge emphasized it. What was it really about?
Well, Wired reported this email went out across the government late January, and it offered federal workers a choice, basically, a deferred resignation. This was for employees who opposed the big changes the Trump administration was pushing, like forcing people back to the office, major downsizing, and this new loyalty requirement. All they had to do was reply with one word: resign. It's almost identical to Musk's Twitter email. It looks like a tool designed to encourage or maybe pressure certain employees to leave.
Okay, and here's where it gets, well, even more sci-fi maybe. Serge was adamant they found proof DOGE employees were using AI, artificial intelligence, for government stuff. And Serge said they were not supposed to. Wired backs this up too.
Yeah, this is a big one. Materials Wired saw showed that DOGE folks inside OPM tested and actually used Meta's Llama 2 model. That's a powerful open source AI. What were they using it for? To review and classify the replies to that fork in the road email? No, they ran it locally, so the data wasn't flying over the internet, but still. The act of using AI to sift through employee emails, looking for who replied resign, essentially analyzing compliance or dissent automatically, that's a major step. And Ricardo Biasini, the ex-Tesla guy we mentioned, he was involved in building the system for this mass email service. It really shows this tech-centric, almost privatized approach creeping into federal HR.
So it wasn't just a one-time test. There was a follow-up email that suggested this AI analysis might be ongoing.
Correct. Just a few weeks later, late February, another email goes out from OPM. This one asked all government workers for 5 bullet points. Describe your weekly accomplishments. Sources said this caused chaos in agencies, people worried about security clearances, what they could actually report. Now, Wired didn't have direct proof Llama was used on these replies, but 2 federal workers told them it would be easy to reuse the code from the fork email analysis. The implication is strong. These bullet points were probably also meant for AI analysis. It looks like a system designed to quantify performance for automated review.
Is this the start of something much bigger then? A broader rollout of AI within the government, driven by DOGE?
It certainly looks that way. Musk's own AI, Grok, wasn't used initially. It was proprietary. But now, with deals through Microsoft Azure and Palantir making it more accessible, it could become an option down the line. And it's not just Llama. DOGE has pushed out other AI tools too. The Army used something called Gamma GPT, its job, to scrub DEI-related language from training materials. That's a pretty targeted ideological use of AI. Wow. Then the GSA, the General Services Administration, they rolled out GSAI. That's a chatbot meant for productivity. And maybe most concerningly, OPM got access to software called AutoRIF. RI stands for Reduction in Force. This software helps plan and execute mass firings of federal workers.
AutoRIF. Okay. That directly taps into the fear federal workers must have been feeling about job cuts, service disruptions. This isn't abstract tech anymore.
Not at all. You put these tools together, AI analyzing loyalty from emails, tools removing specific language, software to help with mass firings, and combine that with the loyalty demands and the resign offers. It paints a picture, a pretty clear one, of a systematic effort. An effort to downsize, reshape the federal workforce using technology as a key enabler. The fear is absolutely rational.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly, but it's all connected. Serge brought up another huge discovery. This public GitHub repository belonging to a guy named John Cooper. Serge called him a huge part in all this. Strong words. What did they find?
Yeah, the official report calls it a significant operational security failure. Basically, between March and May 2025, this guy, John Meriwether Cooper, had a public GitHub account, JM Cooper 176 PowerShell modules. GitHub, for listeners who don't know, it's like a public library for code. Developers share work there. But Cooper's wasn't just sharing code. It exposed internal government infrastructure details, identities, affiliations, specifically naming OPM and DOGE, and sensitive development workflows for U.S. government cloud systems. It was like leaving the entire operational manual out in the open.
Okay, break that down. What exactly was in there? What made it so dangerous?
It was a goldmine, unfortunately. PowerShell scripts, these are powerful automation tools that can control systems, module definitions, CI/CD logic, that's the automated process for building and deploying software, basically the blueprint for how they built and updated things. The report says it allowed for accurate mapping of internal systems, personnel, and procedures. Info that could be used for targeted attacks. Project names like SkyOps, psinstall.com, clearly related to managing systems. Even worse, scripts for connecting to cloud services like Azure and Google Cloud, with unredacted certificates and placeholder values that look like someone was testing real credentials in public code.
Unredacted certificates. Wow. And the coding itself was flawed, too.
It's critically flawed, yes. Multiple scripts performed basic Git functions, managing code versions using unsanitized variables. That's a huge security no-no. It means the code wasn't properly checking the data it was given, leaving it vulnerable to someone injecting malicious commands. The official risk assessment labeled the identity leaks, the workflow exposure, and these unsafe coding practices all as high risk.
So how did Serge and Jay connect this public mess back to OPM specifically?
Serge laid out how Jay did the detective work. He found specific code comments, OPM, OCIO dev scopes hidden within Cooper's code, little tags linking it directly to OPM's tech office. Then they tracked the owner ID of the GitHub account itself, and they found it was set up and administered by Greg Hogan, OPM's chief information officer.
Hogan again.
Yep. So John Cooper wasn't just some random guy. He was Hogan's employee. The leak was directly tied to OPM leadership.
Okay, this is where it gets really strange. Serge said that John Cooper himself actually reached out. He contacted someone in Jay's group, the same group, suing Trump and Elon Musk. Why would he do that?
It's bizarre, right? Serge said Cooper identified himself, said he was just a contractor, and started complaining about being forced off, forced out. So it sounds less like defiance and more like maybe desperation, or trying to explain his side, reaching out to the very people exposing the system he was part of. It's a very unusual move.
An insider expressing discontent. So how did Serge's group, Anonymous, react to this? Did they help him?
No. They acted quickly, but not to help Cooper personally. They decided to dox him, which here meant making his GitHub repository and all that exposed government data public. Serge was clear. They felt it was crucial to shed light on what was happening. The feeling was, basically, Cooper's personal situation was secondary to the massive security failure and the need for public awareness and accountability. They used the leak against the system it came from.
Which brings us to the legal fallout. This wasn't just staying in GitHub comments and anonymous chats. It blew up into major lawsuits.
Absolutely. The American Federation of Teachers, the AFT, filed a big one in Maryland. They sued the Department of Education, OPM, and Treasury. The core claim: unlawful disclosure of personally identifiable information PII to these DOGE affiliates, a direct violation, they argued, of the Privacy Act of 1974.
Remind us quickly, what's the essence of the Privacy Act? Why is it so key here?
It was a landmark law, really, passed in 74 to protect people's personal data held by the federal government. It basically said the government can't just collect and share your info however it wants. It limits disclosure, requires it to be absolutely necessary, and crucially, it's based on need to know. You only get access if your specific job requires it. The AFT lawsuit argued DOGE affiliates got unfettered access before Trump was even inaugurated, and then even more swiftly after, without meeting that need-to-know standard at all.
Can you walk us through the specifics? How did this play out differently in each agency they sued?
Sure. The details are pretty damning. At the Department of Education, DOGE folks got full and prompt access to all unclassified IT systems and data, but the internal memos justifying it. Super vague. Didn't name names, didn't explain why modernizing systems meant needing everyone's social security numbers. And get this, they waived a background check for one DOGE affiliate, a 19-year-old, who apparently had a history of leaking proprietary info at a previous job.
A 19-year-old with a leaking history gets access to student loan data.
Okay, right. Then at OPM, the records were skeletal. Basically no real documentation explaining the decisions, just emails demanding urgent admin access, code, read and write permissions. Some DOGE people had access before the emails even went out. People like OPM2, OPM4, OPM6 got into super sensitive systems like EOPF, that's every federal employee's entire personnel file, and EHRI, the big HR data warehouse for the whole government. This was even though OPM's own CIO, Greg Hogan, later admitted under oath, "We have never needed access to ER or OPF. They had access they explicitly didn't need."
Wow. And Treasury.
At the Department of the Treasury, they named Marco Alez and Thomas Kraus. Alez got interim approval for systems handling payments containing names, social security numbers, all without signing the basic rules of behavior for handling data. Kraus just got over-the-shoulder access. It was widespread, poorly documented, and lacked basic safeguards.
So the lawsuits hammered on this need-to-know violation and argued the decisions were arbitrary and capricious, basically, made without real justification or process.
Exactly. They argued need to know doesn't cover giving sweeping access for vague future tasks. And the courts agreed. The decisions looked hasty, lacked proper vetting, ignored basic security like least privilege or separation of duties. The courts found this created irreparable harm, a serious ongoing risk to federal employees' privacy.
And there was another big lawsuit too, right, from the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, in New York.
Yeah, that one broadly confirmed the same pattern. Widespread, unlawful access to OPM's sensitive PII by DOGE agents, violating the Privacy Act, violating cybersecurity norms. It really drove home how systems with incredibly sensitive data SSNs, bank info, health records, even security clearance details were basically opened up.
And the justification for all this traces back to one specific executive order.
It does. Trump's executive order, 14,158, that's what created DOGE, renamed the U.S. Digital Service, moved it into the White House. And it mandated agencies create these DOGE teams lead, engineer, HR, lawyer, and give them full and prompt access to all unclassified agency records, software systems, and IT systems.
Right.
Now, the EO said it had to be consistent with applicable law and use rigorous data protection standards. But the lawsuits paint a picture where those requirements were just ignored in the rush.
And specific individuals were named as getting this broad access.
Yes. OPM's acting director, Charles Ezel, CIO Greg Hogan again, chief of staff Amanda Scales, they were among about 20 DOGE-affiliated people granted admin access. Audits found problems, inconsistent logging of what they did. There was this group of 7 people from Musk's companies, boring Neuralink on temporary appointments. Some got permanent jobs, some bounced between agencies like GSA, HHS, IRS. It looked very fluid, maybe hard to track.
And we heard about the 19-year-old with a leaking history. Were there other concerning backgrounds?
Well, besides OPM4, the 19-year-old, there was OPM5, a 25-year-old identified as involved in job cuts at USAI and CFPB, and a broader issue. Many of these people, despite getting top-level admin access, hadn't even completed the required basic cybersecurity and ethics training before they got the keys to the kingdom. That's just fundamental protocol being skipped.
What was Hogan's justification for giving access if they didn't even log in sometimes?
His testimony was basically, well, they might need it later, for modernizing IT or implementing hiring freezes. Vague future possibilities. But the courts shot that down. A potential future need doesn't meet the Privacy Act's need-to-know standard. The fact they often didn't log in or had career staff pull data for them just weakened the need argument even more. It looked like preemptive access, not required access.
Okay, maybe the most surprising twist in all this. Despite Trump backing Musk, there was pushback from within Trump's own administration.
Yeah, CNN reported on this clear split in February 2025. Remember that, what did you do last week? Email from Musk's team. Demanding bullet points or you're semi-fired or fired. Musk even tweeted about it. Well, agency heads at the Pentagon, FBI, State, Homeland Security, Energy, they all told their staff, don't reply.
Wow. That's direct defiance of a White House-backed initiative.
It really is. Trump tried to smooth it over publicly, called the email pretty ingenious, denied any disconnect. But these agency heads, considered loyalists, they drew a line. They protected their people, their chains of command. Even Republican senators like Lisa Murkowski and John Curtis spoke out, urging compassion, questioning the harsh tactics. It wasn't universally popular, even on the right.
It really shows that relatively unchecked power, as CNN called it, that Musk's team seemed to have, but the bureaucracy pushed back.
It was a clash of cultures, absolutely. You had Musk's engineers burrowing into agencies, demanding access, questioning jobs, and established government structure, scrambling, resisting. It caused massive confusion, distrust. Federal workers were caught in the middle, facing this outside force challenging everything.
Let's bring it back to Surge. Their work exposing this is clearly vital, but it sounds incredibly difficult and risky.
Surge talked about that, yeah. The constant pressure. They're actively doxing DOGE employees, meaning exposing their connections, like Cooper's GitHub, trying to keep up with their movements. That makes you a target.
A big target.
A huge target. For the government, for powerful individuals, potentially others, it's high-risk work.
And they're not just fighting DOGE or the administration. It's messier than that.
Yeah, Surge mentioned fighting dumbass trolls, people pretending to be anonymous but actually disrupting their work, spreading bad info. They face real consequences, getting shadow banned constantly on social media, having their main account shut down for doxing DOGE. Surge put it plainly, fighting Elon, fighting Trump, but also fighting these trolls who muddy the waters. It's a battle on multiple fronts.
And their operations go way beyond just this DOGE stuff, right? It's a global thing.
Absolutely. Surge mentioned other operations in Georgia, Turkey, Russia. They talked about Kenya, where they got admin access to government systems. But interestingly, in Kenya, they found Red Cross certificate data and made a conscious choice not to release it publicly. Why? Ethical concerns. Worried about harming humanitarian work, that shows a level of calculation of self-imposed ethics that's maybe unexpected but distinguishes groups like theirs. They decide what lines not to cross.
Given all that work, the risk, the complexity, what frustrated Surge the most?
The lack of recognition, really. Surge expressed frustration that they're doing all this S that I feel like Anonymous stands for, but nobody really knows it's them. Bigger, louder, anonymous accounts often get the credit for their detailed, careful work. Surge emphasized how meticulous they are, especially Jay, their collaborator, a stickler on making sure that anything that has to do with him is absolutely 100% correct. It's that feeling of doing the hard work in the shadows while others grab the spotlight.
That dedication to accuracy seems crucial, though, especially with information this explosive.
It's everything. Surge even gave advice on podcast format, suggesting a closed mic for talking with Jay publicly to keep it clear, avoid confusion. It shows they're thinking strategically about how to get accurate information out effectively, not just dumping data. It's about credibility in a really noisy environment.
So wrapping this up, what we've really unpacked today is this incredibly tangled story. It starts with Alberto Daniel Hill conversations with Surge, which opened the door. Then we layered in the legal cases, the reporting, seeing the OPM server issues, the secret AI used by DOGE, the Cooper GitHub leak, the lawsuits. And threaded through it all is the critical, often invisible work of anonymous activists like Surge and Jay, pushing for transparency from behind the curtain.
Yeah, this deep dive really exposes how fast government operations can get tangled up with private interests, often bypassing the usual rules for privacy and security. It hammers home how vital oversight is and how necessary accountability becomes when those normal checks and balances seem to be failing or, deliberately obscured. When the system isn't policing itself effectively, the role of whistleblowers, of these anonymous actors willing to take risks, becomes disproportionately important.
So here's something to chew on as you think about all this. What happens long-term to government oversight, to your own privacy, when powerful, unelected figures can just roll out new tech, bypass the rules, and the main pushback comes not from Congress or the courts initially, but from anonymous activists working in the dark? What does that mean for how democracy functions when the watchdogs themselves are operating outside the system? It's a huge question for our digital future.